Hey Meridian, welcome to the final session of the final day of the technical track. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you all, and I hope that, like me, you learned a ton. I'd say at this point, my brain is full, but really overflowing. My brain is overflowing. All right, your final quiz question was, which animal can be traded on the network? And the official answer, sheep. That's because Stellar code comments and documentation use sheep and wheat to describe arbitrary assets, which comes from a long tradition in trading. So I guess people who talk about trading theoretically, they love their sheep and they love their wheat. However, I want to take a second to dispute the official answer. Why? Because anyone can issue an asset representing anything, and that includes any animal. In fact, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to go get a sheep, an elephant, and a tiger, and I'm going to issue a Stellar Network token for each, just to prove my point. Now, back to the show. Our final tech track session is one of the most eagerly anticipated of the conference. So over the past few days, you've heard from all walks of the SDF engineering team. You've seen the guts of the projects they're working on. You've learned about the big 2020 developments, and hopefully you've discovered something new about developing on Stellar. There's a lot to be excited about. But what's next? What can we expect from the SDF engineering teams over the coming months, over the coming years? Where is all this headed? To answer that question, a roadmap, and here to present it, Alex Cordeiro, engineering manager at SDF. Alex, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Justin. Super excited to be here. Yeah, as Justin said, I'm Alex Cordeiro. I'm an engineering manager at the Stellar Development Foundation. One quick note about my talk today is I'm going to bring a lot of content here, and I won't be able to dive into detail into a lot of stuff that I'm talking. So if you have any particular questions, please ask them in the box. I think it's going to be here if I'm right. So yeah, let's start. So first, a quick agenda of what I'm going to talk about today. So the first thing is I'm going to give a brief introduction, trying to piece together the efforts that we're making and what is it that we're trying to achieve. So giving an overview of SDF's 2021 strategic pillars and the use cases that we'd like to foster and support. Then after that, I'm going to talk about each of these use cases in detail and all of the work that we've been putting to support each of these use cases. And then I'm going to talk about the strategic pillars and our effort and work that we're putting to support it. And then finally, we're going to have a Q&A session. So starting with the introduction. So the year of 2020 has been super challenging for, well, many reasons. And despite all of those reasons, we've managed to do a lot of work at Stellar. And this year, our big focus was in basically two things. First, improving our tools and documentation, and also building products ourselves in order to solve real-life problems like what Vibrant does, but also to better understand the pain points of building on Stellar and using that to dog food and to improve the tools that we have. So for the last few months, we at SDF worked on our 2021 strategy, and we defined and identified strategic pillars, which remain the same as we defined in 2020. And also the top 3 use cases that would like to foster and support in 2021 was what to prepare for in the year of 2022 and after. So the main goal of this talk is to briefly explain the strategy and use cases, highlighting the work we're doing to support them, and more broadly to explain how does everything that we learned at Meridian fit together. So this is a quick recap of the strategic pillars that at this point you've probably heard of throughout Meridian. The first pillar has to do with robustness and usability of Stellar. Then the second one is about building trust around Stellar. And the last one about fostering real life use cases on Stellar. So fostering usage of Stellar to solve real life problems. That said, let's talk about the most common use cases that we see on Stellar today and in the near term. So the first one is business-to-business cross-border payments, or in other words, business payments for high-cost corridors, and also consumer-to-consumer cross-border payments, or remittances in high-friction markets. The second use case is USD savings, tokenized and securitized assets. And then finally, for the future, or what we're trying to support in the long term, is digital cash and payment processing. So let's talk about each of these use cases more in detail and talk about the work that we're doing to support each of them. So the first use case, as I said, is business-to-business payments for high-cost corridors. So we know that businesses outside of Stellar have a hard time sending payments to other businesses in a different country for many reasons, but a few of them are like fees are sometimes very expensive, or sometimes it isn't even possible to send money from one country to the other because maybe the currency is so-called non-convertible, or in other words, it's not freely traded on the global foreign exchange market, like it is the case for the Brazilian real or the Nigerian naira. And the good thing is Stellar enables these so-called corridors on its distributed exchange. So it's actually, using Stellar, it's actually possible to send money using these non-conventional or exotic corridors. And also it's much cheaper. So a clear example of that is the curry and tempo use case that has been mentioned a couple of times throughout Meridian. And then the complementary use case is the customer-to-customer remittances in high-friction markets. So it's kind of, if we're thinking about the curry and tempo use case, so businesses sending money from Nigeria to Europe, and then the counterpart is individuals in Europe who are sending money back to their family and loved ones in Nigeria. And the benefits are the same. It's potentially faster and cheaper, and sometimes it's the only viable solution. So these are different use cases, but I've grouped them together because they present a similar technical challenge. So let's explore the challenges. So there are a few pain points about supporting this use case, or for anyone who wants to implement that using Stellar. First, becoming a Stellar anchor can be hard. There are a lot of ecosystem standards and interoperability standards. It's hard to tell whether your implementation of an anchor is correct. And how do you make sure that the assets that you produce can move and have liquidity? So the path for creating, the path for creating a seamless cross-border corridor while providing a great UX, ideally abstracting away that you're using crypto to the end user is not super clear. And it's also hard to have visibility into what's already there available on Stellar. Like what are the markets and currencies that are available, or even what is the health of those markets, or are they liquid? Can they actually move and be easily exchanged? So I'm going to talk first about one of my favorite developments of this year, which is SEP 31, also called fiat to fiat payments, Stellar ecosystem proposal. And the SEP 31 addresses the use case of imagine Alice in the US wants to send money to Bob in Brazil. And ideally, we don't want to assume that either Alice or Bob know anything about blockchain or about Stellar in particular, but we want to still be able to enable Alice to send money to Bob. So SEP 31 introduces a standard and a set of APIs and guidelines for you to implement this flow. So basically it works, Alice signs up with a service, let's call it US Anchor, that implements SEP 31. And Alice indicates she wants to send a payment to Bob, and she provides Bob's banking details in Brazil. And then Alice makes a fiat deposit to US Anchor, and this is very interesting and very important. So Alice is actually sending, making a bank deposit. She is not thinking about Stellar or crypto. She's just making a regular bank deposit to US Anchor's bank account. And then US Anchor communicates the transaction details as well as any required KYC to the Brazilian Anchor via SEP31. And then US Anchor uses Stellar to transfer the value via a mechanism that we called a path payment. And then BR Anchor actually receives the Stellar payment. And whenever it detects that there is a new payment, BR Anchor knows that this is related to Bob's payment. And then BR Anchor makes a deposit directly into Bob's account, bank account. So this process is very beautiful, because, in my opinion, because neither Alice nor Bob need a Stellar account. And in fact, they don't need any knowledge about Stellar at all. And this is super powerful because we're using crypto to use real life, to solve real life problems for people who might not even know Stellar is being used behind the scenes. And people don't need to be tech savvy to benefit from our blockchain to improve their lives. So next, implementing anchors is complicated. So how can we make it as easy as possible to build an anchor? So one of the solutions that we realized the version 1.0 this year was Polaris, which is an extendable and comprehensive anchor implementation that supports every active Stellar ecosystem proposal for transferring assets. So we have SEP10 for authentication, we have non-interactive and interactive on and off ramps, and also direct fiat to fiat payments, which is SEP31, as I just described. And there's the ability for you to actually plug your own Stellar Tombow KYC deposit and withdrawal rails integration. And it has full support to new protocol features like two-part payments, which I'm going to talk more next. So this is a super powerful tool that enables you to focus on the parts of the business that only you know, and let the Stellar part and the APIs and the complex parts of becoming an anchor from the technical perspective already, they're already implemented, so you don't have to really worry about that. So it's super powerful. And also, yeah, whenever you're implementing an anchor, how can you validate your implementation, and how do you prove that your anchor is actually interoperable? So we have a couple of solutions for anchor implementers, like the SEP24 demo client, which is super interactive. You can actually see step by step what's going on in each of the SEP flows and see what is going on, if it's correct, if there's anything missing, if there's a step of the process that you haven't implemented correctly. And also, we have the Anchor Validator, which is a more comprehensive tool, but less interactive. So it actually just presents all the endpoints and what is their status, whether they're correctly implemented or not, or they're working or not. Also, there is you want to know the prices. Supposing that whenever you want to integrate your business with Stellar, you want to know the prices that trades were made at over a specific period of time. And in the past, you would need to refer to the Horizon database, but it's not trivial to use it because Horizon is very optimized to its own use cases and also the APIs that it serves. So if you want to ask this question in particular, it's not going to be very efficient, and sometimes it can take like weeks for you to get your answer. So we came up with Project Hubble, which is an open public BigQuery data set containing all Stellar ledger data in a user-friendly format. And we currently have a version 1.1, which is live and is built on top of Horizon's database, and it's updated on a daily basis. And we have the version 2.0, which is coming soon, that is built on top of our new ingestion system that is completely decoupled from Horizon or any database. And it actually gets updated every 5 minutes. So it actually allows you to get insights into more recent events. Also, you probably have already heard about Kelp, our trading bot. And this year we worked a lot on making it more usable. So besides the CLI, we recently released a web and desktop interface to make it easier to use. And we're planning to host a web version on testnet for learning about market making and experimenting with Kelp. And we've also added a few more complex trading templates to enable different use cases, as well as a stronger trade tracking infrastructure. So the second use case that I talked about is USD savings and tokenized and securitized assets. So Stellar can actually provide to their end users, whether they're individuals or businesses, access to assets that would otherwise be unavailable, or maybe that there would be very high friction or very complicated to get access to via traditional means. And this exposes users to a universe of benefits, such as being able to bypass hyperinflation, which is the case of what we're trying to tackle with Vibrant, or even have an increased store value or access financial products that they wouldn't be able to without Stellar. So a few challenges that we have for this use case is crypto is very complicated. Users shouldn't need to learn about hardware wallets, recovery passphrases to be able to use Stellar assets. And we also want to be able to provide a good user experience while also allowing users to have full custody of their funds, which brings the topic of creating a non-custodial wallet is hard. Like, how do you manage Lumen-based reserves and transaction funds while preventing Lumen farming? And also, issuing assets is something that we know, or most people that have interacted with Stellar from the technical perspective know it's easy, but can we make it easier for anyone to issue assets? And also, regulation is important and the requirements vary a lot. So how can we support regulated assets in a way that's adaptable to its situation? So we learned a lot by building Vibrant. We realized that our protocol was hard to use for a few common use cases. So this triggered, along with like listening to the ecosystem and the issues that other people pointed out, we actually implemented major advancements in the core Stellar protocol. A few of them, two-part payments, which enables, for the Vibrant use case, for instance, which is a USD savings use case, sending payments to new accounts or accounts that don't have the required trust line yet. We also have fee bump transactions that allow a sponsoring account to actually pay for your transaction fee, so that you don't have to actually send lumens to to your customer's wallet so that they can pay for fees, but actually they just set the fee to 0 and ask the wallet server to actually sponsor those fees. And the same for reserves, which is what was a big pain point, because every Stellar account has to maintain a base reserve, and it's complicated to handle that in a scenario in which you want to sponsor that. So right now with sponsored reserves, you can actually sponsor base reserves for other Stellar accounts while maintaining your ownership of the fund. So this also addresses a lot of potential security issues and farmability of lumens, if you will. So also we did a lot of work on the user experience of providing or enabling account recovery of Stellar accounts. And but the big focus there was to provide a way for users not to have to memorize any mnemonic passphrases or having to store their keys in a very careful place so that they won't lose it. So SEP30 addresses that and provides a way better UX that is focused on email and SMS codes. And the user collects signature from recovery entities to recover their accounts. So this is super powerful and brings it brings usability of Stellar to a level that is very similar to other fintech solutions, and it's less about crypto and requiring deep knowledge about the technical details of Stellar and crypto in general. We're also working on adding first-class support to regulated assets. So we know that there are several use cases that require a more fine-grained control over the asset that you're issuing to meet compliance and regulation. So we've been iterating on SEP 8, which is concerns regulated assets, and we're working with Security, which is a super strong partner of ours, and we're creating a reference wallet implementation for making use of regulated assets. And there's also a new CAP that is being worked on, which is it talks about asset clawback, which is potentially another compliance requirement that would enable a lot of use cases and important companies to integrate with Stellar. So besides that, in terms of like making it easier for people to issue assets, we're working on an asset issuance wizard. And there are lots of like smaller usability SEPs like SEP 32, which talks about how can we refer to assets without having to use those huge public keys that are super hard to memorize, if you can memorize it at all. And yeah, the last use case that I mentioned is digital cash and payment processing, with the goal of enabling the unbanked to be able to use cash digitally without requiring any account or any bank account or credit cards. And the examples are making online purchases for furniture using Stellar, or even paying for your morning coffee using a Stellar wallet. And the challenges there are, if we become mainstream using that, we're gonna have to handle a very high transaction throughput. And many use cases actually require privacy, and by default, everything in blockchain is public. So if we need to maintain confidentiality, we want to be able to support that. So we're currently working on project Sitenet, which is a project that even Jed mentioned during the community town hall yesterday. And it has it aims to handle a very high transaction throughput, and there's a big focus on interoperability with the Stellar main network, so that you can send payments from the mainnet to the Sitenet account and vice versa, and the possibility to be run privately to accommodate use cases and regulation. So this is a very early stage project, but we're planning to have an MVP in early 2021 and a full production solution by end of year 2021. So yeah, this is the work that we've been doing to support all of those use cases. And I wanted to talk about other work that we've been doing to support the strategic pillars that I mentioned. So in order to foster and develop real sustainable use cases, we just recently released a new account viewer, which actually is a huge step towards usability, but also security, because it encourages you to use a hardware wallet or other tools that actually handle your keys in a way that is more secure than what you could potentially do on your own. And it's super powerful, and I'm super excited about this product. And there's also Freighter, which is those two tools actually work together really well. So Freighter is very similar to MetaMask for Ethereum. So it's a tool, a browser plugin that actually stores your keys and handles signing transactions for you in a way that if the wallet or the web tool that you're using actually is integrated with Freighter, you don't have to paste your keys, or you don't have to do anything. All the transaction signing process is handled by Freighter. And it actually is also very important from the user security perspective, because it actually has alerts to the website that you're currently using to prevent scams, to prevent any sort of malicious problems that you might face while using your Stellar wallet. Also, we revamped our docs and we're super excited about that. And we consistently get feedback that they're the best in the industry. So we're doing a lot of work to keep up with that. So yeah, we have the new docs that teach you how to use Stellar and what the moving parts are. And we have the new Horizon API docs, so you can actually learn how to integrate with Stellar. Also, we have been working this year on the ingestion system and the captive core for Horizon, with the goal of detaching Horizon from Stellar Core's database. So Horizon can run independently, and Core only requires an in-memory database. So this enables a lot of use cases. And it, like for instance, you can create a specific Horizon instance that only cares about the assets that you carry. So this simplifies a lot of the process, and also makes it much easier to deploy Horizon and Stellar Core nodes in a much simpler way. Also because like Core, for instance, doesn't require an in-memory database, and you can run Horizon independently from Core. And also, in terms of packages, we're planning to distribute and support Stellar Core on all Ubuntu LTS versions. And also, we're planning to add Kubernetes support for Stellar nodes and Horizon. So that's pretty much everything that I had. I know that this has been a lot of information. Looking forward to answering any questions that anyone might have.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Alex. We have some questions coming in. I think just first, since we only have 5 minutes left, if someone wants to follow along in these engineering developments and sort of see what's happening, what's the best way for them to sort of keep up?
That's a great question. Of course, many of our projects are open source. So if you follow our repositories on GitHub, that's definitely a great source. We have also our newsletter, which we try to highlight everything new that we're releasing so that people can see what's new. So I think those are really good. We have our developer blog as well. So whenever there's something super exciting, it's going to be there.
Great. And there are a couple of questions about feedback and sort of participation. How do we get feedback, or how does SDF get feedback from people about projects to work on? How do we take into consideration the ecosystem's point of view?
Well, I think the same way as we have open source projects that people can create issues, and we are happy to discuss any potential improvements that we can implement. And also, people are free, and we highly encourage that people actually contribute to our code bases and like create new things on top of what we have. And also we have a Keybase, which is definitely, we have the dev discussion channel that actually is an open place for anyone who wants to provide their feedback and suggest anything. Yeah.
And a related question, it sounded like there was, for the regulated assets, Securrency was sort of a design partner for working through that. How do we choose design partners? How does SDF choose design partners?
That's an interesting question. I feel like we learn about potential use cases from people who reach out to us, or things that we actively want to actually support. And whenever we hear about those use cases, we try to either identify a company that would be able to guide us on implementing that, or even the company itself reaches out to us and say, hey, we want to actually implement this on Stellar, can you help us? And then it's more of a collaborative design. And I think the point of that is to make sure that we're addressing, as I said, real life problems and not theoretical building blocks that we could implement.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of this work that you outlined, of course, it's work that's happening inside the SDF, but it's done in collaboration with people outside the SDF.
Definitely, yeah.
Great.
Most part, yeah.
Yeah, a couple questions about Sitenet in the last 2 minutes that we have. First question is from John. How does Sitenet differ from ZKVM?
I think they're actually complementary solutions. So this is whenever we're working on Sitenet, we want to make sure that the API that we come up with can actually integrate well with ZKVM. And so Oleg has been part of the process. And we're constantly talking to him about like how we can create it. And they're addressing different problems. Stellar is, or the way that we're approaching Sitenet is more like increasing throughput and also providing the potential for privacy, but in a different way. Like you can host this privately, and ZKVM is like more in the sense of like something that could be public, but it's encrypted in a way that you would need to have a special way to decrypt things.
Interesting. And sort of with the Sitenet stuff, it sounds like there's a lot of thinking going on. Is there a sort of, can you just, you mentioned this, but can you kind of reiterate the tentative time frame for that?
Sure. So we're working on a design that should be ready by the end of the year. So we're trying to come up with an MVP or like even a prototype on Q1 of 2021, but we want to have a production solution so that we can use that in 2022. So probably we're going to have something ready by the end of next year.
Right. It sounds like it's a lot of work, a lot of important work,
yeah.
but it's going to take a while. Yeah. It's great. I mean, all of this work. Thank you so much, Alex. I think that's all the time that we have for questions. It's definitely super exciting to see all of this, to see where the SDF engineering teams are headed. It feels like things are accelerating, which is great because we had a lot of momentum that we picked up in 2020, and just being able to continue forward with that momentum, super exciting. Friends out there, the future is bright. The future is bright. Meridian, let me ask you for the final time, what did you think of that session? Any thoughts on the roadmap? Any insights you'd like to share? If so, please leave your feedback via the session feedback bar on the right hand of your screen.